on time. I'm on time, so that's it. Okay, so welcome. Thank you for coming out. It's a great day to talk about rain gardens since it's a rainy day. So you'll be able to go home now after you leave here and actually figure out on your own property where the runoff is coming from and where you may choose to put a rain garden if you ever choose to do that. So my name is Karin LaGreca. I work as a private consultant for sustainability, mostly with residents and municipalities, trying to get them to do some small actions that just help, your life and everyone else. I teach at Ramapo College of New Jersey. I teach world sustainability. And I'm also a K-12 environmental educator for Ramapo College down in the Meadowlands Environment Center, an education center in Lyndhurst, in DeCourt Park. So if you have never been there, it's worth the trip. Have you been there? Yeah, right? It's very nice. You can walk around. It's right on the water and the docks. You were there? No, really? Okay. So Monday through Friday, we have, a lot of school groups come through. So we do a lot of education down there and everything. So I do that. And I'm also the chairwoman of the board of MIVA, which is the Mawa Environmental Volunteers Organization, which is a nonprofit youth group that we have an educational farm in Mawa that we teach people how to grow sustainably, sustainable agriculture, and sell our food and all of that. So it's all based on volunteerism. That's a little bit of my story. Today you're here to learn about rain gardens. Rain garden is a blooming technology, and I say getting to the root of the problem. And the reason I say getting to the root of the problem is because we talk a lot about native plants and their root system and how they're very important in a rain garden. So we'll go over some of the problems. Of course, there's always a problem. Water quality degradation and flooding. New Jersey is seeing that a lot. Our water quality, almost all of our waterways are impaired at some point, according to the State Department of Environmental Protection. Population, right, is one of the issues that cause water quality problems. Land use is another problem that causes water quality problems and also flooding, the way we design our land. Impervious surface coverage, right? How much hard surface do we have in New Jersey? That creates these problems. And of course, the big problem for water quality is non-point source pollution. And that is from every one of us that live on land. That's where the water problems are coming from. And some solutions, low impact development. That just means, something easy, a simple way to solve a problem without major impact on anything. And green infrastructure is what a rain garden is. So green infrastructure solutions are definitely a solution to our water quality and our flooding problems. And rain gardens are only one of a green infrastructure solution. There are a few others, but today we're going to talk about rain gardens. And then Mawa, I just put in a huge rain garden in Mawa. Well, in September 2017, we put it in, and we're still working on it. We're going to finish it up this April. So I have some information about that, and I can show you that. So that's my case study. So what's the problem? A sustainability problem. First of all, sustainable. To be sustainable, it has to be capable. Something has to be capable of carrying on, right? So, continued with minimal long-term effects on the environment, and actually that should say also people as well, right? It's not only the environment. But that, we're talking about the environment today for our clean water. Clean water is becoming scarce. It's a valuable resource. In the 21st century, we are seeing less and less and less clean water. Its supply is finite, right? We only have a certain amount of water that's useful for all living things, and it is becoming impaired, and that's a big issue in New Jersey. So, just to remind everyone, right, 97% of our water is in ocean, so it's salt water, not potable for humans. Glaciers hold 2%, and ice and fresh water, 1%. So we have 1% of fresh water for all living things to survive. So we want to keep that as clean as possible. New Jersey, right? We are a very dense nation. We're the densest nation in the state. The densest state in the nation. Here's some population figures. So, 1950, we had over 4 million people. 2010, you had over 8 million people. And the projection up to 2020 from the New Jersey Government and Labor website is they're projecting about over 9 million people. Okay? So we're increasing. Even though I know people are leaving New Jersey because it's so expensive, but the population is still going to increase from people being here and birth rates and other people moving in and out. Okay, so one of the problems, right, is the way we use our land and the way we have used our land, right? So we, started with green infrastructure. Forests are a green infrastructure, okay? So what we do, we cut down forests, we fill in wetlands. You could see if you go down by Lyndhurst, by the Meadowlands, that was all wetlands at one point, and wetlands are supposed to capture water and filter it to keep it clean for us and to alleviate flooding, but we fill them up and we build hard surfaces on top of them, so then you wonder why we have flooding problems. But anyway, so we deforest and we put in built infrastructure, which is called impervious surface coverage, and that means any hard surface where the water runs off and does not infiltrate into. Okay, so green infrastructure, the water infiltrates in. The roots soak it up, the water goes down into the ground, it doesn't run off, it doesn't cause flooding, and it keeps the water on site and clean. But as we remove our green infrastructure and add built infrastructure, that's where the problem arises. So now, New Jersey has 675,000 acres of impervious surface coverage. And I got that from a newly updated report from Rutgers Water Resources, who is leading the way in all of this information and rain gardens and water problems. So that's a lot of acres of impervious surface coverage that we now have to deal with stormwater runoff. So oops, I'm so sorry. So impervious surface coverage. So if you just have natural ground cover, okay, you pretty much get about 25% of infiltration, shallow infiltration, and 10% runoff. But the more you build, okay, so then you put a little bit of housing up, a little bit of hard surface up, a parking lot, a driveway, so you get a little bit less shallow infiltration, but you get a lot more runoff, more runoff, 20% now. And then as you continue to build, you get more runoff, 30%, and then if you have an urban area or city area, 55% runoff. So instead of that water soaking into the ground the way nature intended, it's running off into our rivers, lakes, streams, and picking up a lot of pollutants along the way. So development increases the volume and rate of runoff from a site and reduces groundwater recharge and transpiration, right? Which helps with our whole water cycle. So if you're like Mawa, we get our water from underground aquifers. So we want the water to stay on site because we need it to recharge our aquifers. Now, some people get their water from reservoirs, right? But you still, it's very important to keep the water on site if possible. You don't want it running off. And of course, human activity, anthropogenic activity, right, is what causes all of our problems. So human activity and population is causing a lot of our water problems. And this is from the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and they're saying by 2050, 9.8 billion people in the world, and then by 2100, over 11 billion. So you can see how we need to start worrying about our water quality. So what is stormwater runoff? What is really the problem? Like, who cares, right? Non-point source pollution. This is why we care. Stormwater runoff water is from rain and melting snow. You'll see it outside today running all over. That flows across the landscape. Now, okay, so what? But what's on the landscape that we're worrying about? Well, if you don't pick up after your dog, if you put pesticides, fertilizers, right? Or your car is leaking oil, your cigarette people throw litter and cigarette butts, and anything that's on land, right? The first, quarter inch to half inch of rain is called the first flush. It takes everything with it. And where does it go? Into storm drains most of the time, which leads to rivers, lakes, and streams. That does not lead to treatment plants, okay? So, it picks up and transports pollutants, making the water now a pollutant, right? You have, fresh, clean water coming down, and then once it hits the land, it becomes a pollutant. And, we're talking about rooftops, paved areas, bare soils, lawns, blacktop, anything hard surface where it runs off. Your house, your businesses, your schools, your churches, everything like Just a little visual of non-point source pollution. So at your house, perhaps, your roof, do we ever think what goes on the roofs, right? We have a lot of friends that live, run around up there, right, and pass by. So there's pollutants on our roof. So that water running off of your roof is not clean. If you use fertilizers, pet waste, motor oil, this is all running into the streets. So we wanted to stop it from running into the streets, keep it on land, so this way our water quality stays cleaner. And that's called non-point source pollution because we can't just point to you or you and say you're the cause and you're the cause, right? Because we're all the cause, right? When you talk about point source pollution, that means you can go to a factory or a business where they actually have a pipe that it's discharging, and you can actually say, oh, it's coming right from there, that pipe. So that's point pollution. But non-point is because it's coming from all of us on land. So it's non-point source pollution. And that is the biggest concern, way more than factories, okay? Because we have a lot of citizens on land, right? We have a lot of people. And then, of course, if you live by any waterways or, you listen to the news or anything, some places are now having, problems with algae growth in their lakes, right? And this is from the phosphorus and nitrogen that's flowing from land, right, into the waterways. It's growing algae, so it grows plants on land, but it also grows plants in the water, right? And then the problem is, the plants, when they start dying, the bacteria come, they use up a lot of oxygen, and it creates a low dissolved oxygen level, and then you have fish kills. So that's pretty much when you hear about a fish kill, 99% of the time it's because the dissolved oxygen levels in the water went too low and the fish couldn't breathe. And dead zones. I was just in Louisiana last week with Ramapo College students, and we were working on the Gulf. We were doing beach stabilization projects, and the forest people that we were working with and the soil conservation people said that right there where we were pretty much is a huge dead zone. Okay, so that means nothing's living there, right, in the Gulf, right? The Gulf is having a lot of problems these days, right, with red tide and everything. But so anyway, so dead zones, right, areas of water now that have no life because of our pollution. Okay. So I know what you're all saying. What can I do? Oh my God, what can I do? So this is what you can do, right? You can build rain gardens. Okay? Now, rain gardens are nature's filters. They soak up and clean our water. Okay, so we'll get more into that in a minute. But it's a planted depression that can collect, soak, and filter stormwater from roofs, driveways, streets, parking lots, and other hard surfaces. The benefits: reduces flooding, reduces pollutants, replenishes your groundwater, and provides, of course, plant habitat for wildlife because we're using native plants. You don't have to worry about mosquitoes because if it's designed correctly, the water will only stay in there for about 24 hours, and that's not long enough for mosquitoes to hatch, the eggs to hatch. So that's not a problem. So really, the only difference is you see how this is dug down, kind of like a bowl shaped. That is pretty much the difference between a regular garden and a rain garden. Okay, and and of course it's site specific. You have to figure out where the best place to put this garden would be. But the reason so the benefit is instead of everything washing off either down your driveway or into the storm drains and having all that pollution along with it into the waterways, you're now catching your water into the rain garden. It's sitting there. It's slowly infiltrating into the ground. The root system and all of the friends that we're going to talk about in a minute are eating up the pollutants. And so your water is now cleaner. So green infrastructure. A rain garden is one of the best, easiest green infrastructure solutions, especially for residents to build. So green infrastructure refers to methods of stormwater management that reduce runoff, allowing the stormwater to infiltrate, to be treated by vegetation and or soil, and to be stored for reuse. Okay, so it stays on site. The use of green infrastructure encourages the idea that stormwater is a resource, okay, that can be reused instead of it being treated as a nuisance and allowing it to be removed as quick as possible. So we have to realize, rainwater is a resource. Does anyone have rain barrels or collects rainwater for any reason? Yeah, right? So it's as a resource, right? You use that instead of paying for water. Now you can water your plants or do whatever you want, except for drinking it, right? Don't drink it. You know, because coming off your roof, and remember we talked about that already. You know, so it's a resource. So if we could just change our mindset and have people capture rainwater and use that, right? It saves you money because now you're not turning on your tap, and I'm assuming most of us pay for water. And then, you know, it's also, you know, it's just good to keep it from running off, okay? So it's really just a change of mindset, right? How we think about water. You know, when we're young and you're training your children to, you know, get out of diapers and things, I mean, you know, you're always in the bathroom, right? Like, oh, flush it away, flush it away. So we grow up thinking of as water as like, just take it away. It's a you know, not to save it or you know, really think of it as a precious resource. It's just like, you know, let it go away, you know, send it away somewhere. So let's not send it away anymore, let's keep it on site and use it. This is just another visual of a rain garden. You know, so it's not only your house, right? If you have a business or school or any building, any hard surface, a shed, wherever, right, that you have a lot of runoff coming from, you can build a rain garden. This one, you know, it's from the building and they're stopping it from going into the street. Okay, so you put a rain garden in between two impervious surface coverage most of the time, right? If it's a building or a street or a building and waterway or a parking lot and a waterway, you know, you're keeping it from running into the street, which will then lead into a waterway or directly into a waterway. So it's just another example of how you can, where you could put a rain garden. And of course, native plants, right? We're at the botanical gardens, right? We all love plants. Plants makes us smile. But there are differences between non-native and native. And for rain gardens, you want to plant native plants. First of all, their root system is way better, right? They're longer, they're stronger, and that makes them be able to break up the soil so water can infiltrate, okay? You know, we use perennials, right? So we don't have to keep planting them all the time, right? So that saves you money in the long run, okay? And native plants are well adapted to the climate and the rainfall. So you don't have to water them. You don't have to use a lot of inputs on them, okay? So, you know, well adapted to our local climate and soil. Natural defenses to plant diseases and insects. So you don't have to use a lot of pesticides and herbicides and sprays and all of these inputs, which is not good for our water quality. But it also saves you money. You don't have to stop, you know, you can stop buying all of that stuff, right? And then they're drought tolerant. So, you know, they're used to our weather conditions here. So you don't have to water them all summer long. Now, when you first plant them, the first season, yes, of course, you have to get them established. But after that, you should not have to water them at all. So it helps conserve and filter water, provides habitat, of course, biodiversity. Right? You know, we all know about the monarchs and the bees and all the problems that our friends, the insects, are having, you know, and the connection to human wellness. We need our insects, right? We need some food that they provide for us. So, you know, when you plant native plants, you bring back native insects and biodiversity, which is very important, which has kind of been lost along the way. By ripping out our green infrastructure and building our hard surfaces, we have less habitat for our friends. And then, of course, I already said the long root system allows for infiltration of water. Okay. So again, just to talk about the roots, deep roots, plants with a deep root system encourage infiltration and help absorb nutrients. Okay, so it's absorbing the nutrients. And, you know, microbes and bacteria and things that are going on, you know, living under the soil that maybe we never think about, you know, they have the ability to take a pollutant and change it into something that the plant could use, right? So, you know, deep roots, they could absorb the nutrients. They have the ability to change things to nitrogen, and they're just amazing. Root systems are amazing. So again, native plants are adapted to local conditions and are easy to maintain once established. Plus, they attract birds, butterflies, and other pollinators. And then when you build it, you kind of, you know, just build like a little berm there that holds the water. You know, you want to keep that water in there. So you'll see some pictures from Mawa's rain garden, and I'll explain that more. And then again, for your house, you want to disconnect the water flowing on the street and put it into the rain garden. So here's some of our friends here, microbe action underneath the ground. Does anyone think about what's going on under the ground? Ever? You just kind of walk on it, right? Yeah, so, I have to tell my students, they, think I'm crazy. I talk about soil a lot because it's very important. It's the basis of life. We can't grow food unless we have healthy soil, and we have to think about what's going on under that soil. There's a lot of activity going on under that soil. And, soil is a big thing now, regenerative agriculture and carbon sequestration. I mean, soil. So, we have a lot of life under the soil that's doing good things for us. And one of those good things is that it takes the pollutants and eats it for us, cleans it up for us, so our water is not polluted anymore. So the root hairs absorb water and nutrients from the soil, okay? And then, again, the bacteria and microbes and everything under there do their job in cleaning up and filtering our water. So, in sustainability, we talk about the triple bottom line, right? Everyone knows the bottom line, right? The bottom line. What's the bottom line? You're going to buy a new car. All right, just tell me the bottom line. I can't keep going in and out with your manager for 3 hours, right? So what's the bottom line? But in sustainability, we talk about the triple bottom line because it's not only about money. Of course, money is important. The economy of your town is important, right? But also environmental and social, okay? So whenever we think, or people in sustainability think about anything, we think about the triple bottom line. Okay, how is this going to affect or benefit people and the environment and the economy? Okay, you want to balance. Sometimes they show the triple bottom line on the three-legged stool, right? So if you think about three-legged stool, one's the economy, one's society, and one's the environment. But if you take one of those legs away, right, it's not so balanced anymore, right? So, to keep our world balanced and equitable and healthy, the triple bottom line. So the triple bottom line, just some of the things for the triple bottom line for rain gardens, right? Reduced flooding costs. So if you've ever been in a flood, if your house or your car or something has ever been in a flood, there's a cost to you, insurance or not, right? Sandy, and Hurricane Sandy down the shore, people, even if you had flood insurance, it's still a cost. Because they come in and they say, oh yeah, all your kitchen cabinets are damaged and your kitchen floor is damaged. Okay, yes, but not your top kitchen cabinets are fine. But can you match them? You have 25-year-old cabinets. So out of your own pocket now goes, top kitchen cabinets. So flooding costs, whether, it's just a couple mattresses, a couple TVs, a car, or more, right? Flooding costs people and it costs municipalities. Okay, think about Hoboken and Jersey City and Philadelphia and things like that. They flood a lot because they have a lot of hard surface, right? They have a lot of buildings, a lot of roadways. So it costs the town and it costs the people a lot of money. So we can reduce flooding by planting gardens, right? Pretty good. Of course, when you have flooding, you have health concerns. There's a lot of problems that come out of flooded waters, and mold and mildew and all of that. So, economic and social, right? When you have health problems, a lot of times it costs you money. And also, of course, you don't want people to get sick. Cleaner waterways, so that, goes under environmental, but it's also social. Because if your town has all bad waterways, do you think anyone wants to buy your house if you're selling it, right? Or something like that, right? So clean water also improves your community, right? And, your economics in your community. Also, clean waterways obviously is good for our ecological life that's living in our waterways. Now, if you have a house, say down the shore, or where water brings in money, right? Whether it's fishing or tourism or renting your beach house, right? So, if all the waterways, you have fish kills, right? Say you have fish kills down the shore this summer and you just spent $3,000 to rent the house, you're not going to be so happy, right? So if we keep our waterways clean, we can see economic value and also environmental or ecological value. Of course, it brings biodiversity, and that's priceless, right? To bring back biodiversity, because humans, we need biodiversity to survive. And of course, less inputs and less watering. So you save money on watering, you save time. I used to water my garden. I have a lot of gardens in my house. It used to take me 3 hours to water all my gardens. that's crazy. Like, I stopped that years ago. I was like, this is crazy. First of all, I'm using a lot of water. Second of all, I'm using a lot of time. Third of all, I decided if you can't live here without water, you can't live here. So that's when I really got into just native, no, really, right? Native plants, pretty, except your vegetables. I mean, of course, but, native plants, perennials. So it's a way better quality of life now for me. And I don't pay for water, and I never really used chemicals or anything anyway. So, anyway, so that's just some of the triple bottom line benefits of a rain garden. So, remember that economy, environment, and social and people, right? It should all be beneficial and working together. Any questions before I go into MAWAs? Yes. Oh. Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That seems to make a lot of sense because that's really where the acres of hardscape
Mm-hmm.
that they built it in when they were creating those hardscapes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's planning.
Sorry about that.
That would be your planning board, zoning board actually creating different laws and rules and, to have that implemented, which would be great. But, and maybe that will happen, right? That's why people, citizens, are going to maybe be changing some of their minds when they hear.
Courses and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, those are going away too, right? They're turning into homes. Apple Ridge, right, is now all homes that got, Right. But I know the Franklin Lakes Golf Course went away to houses, and now, so, that's changing too. So anyway, so MAWA's First Rain Garden, it's on the corner of East Ramapo Avenue and North Railroad Avenue. It's the reason why we needed to do this is because there's a parking lot there for the train station commuters, and it's right next to Winters Pond, which is really part of the river, but it ponds up right there. I have to say that when I was getting my master's at Ramapo for sustainability, you have to write your thesis and you have to have some future goals. And one of those, and my goal was to put a rain garden in MAWA. I had no idea how I was going to do that, if that would ever be, but you had to come up with something, so that's what I came up with. So, never give up, because years later it actually happened. So anyway, this is the rain garden property. Winters Pond is obviously right there. This is all parking lot for the train station. So if I have pictures of it, the amount of pollution that was coming off of that parking lot was crazy, right? And going right into the pond. So after, figuring out, there was a couple sites that I thought we should put a rain garden in, and I still think we should still put more rain gardens in, but this was pretty much the first priority site because of the pond. So you could see we have, I don't know why this doesn't show up here, but you can see we have 5 different pits. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different pits. Those are the actual rain gardens. And then we have a walkway here for people to come and hang out. We have tables and chairs, and you'll see more pictures. And then this is going to be phase 3 that we have to do this spring, and I'll explain to you why we had to kind of keep adding more things. But anyway, so let me go back really quick. So this is from Rutgers. I worked with Rutgers Extension, the Water Resource Program, which is leading the way in New Jersey on all of these green infrastructure programs. They obviously did all the drawing and the calculations and all of that. But what they're telling us up here, I know you probably can't read it all, but the most important thing, it's saying stormwater treated annually, 949,000 gallons a year we're saving from going into that pond polluted. That's how much this rain garden is going to capture, based on average 1 1/4 inch rainfall, which is what New Jersey normally has. Now, of course, extreme weather and all of that, it's going to change calculations, I suppose. But with average rainfall right now, almost 1 million gallons of water just from this parking lot is being cleansed and kept on site instead of running off and polluting our pond. So this was the site before. So, this is Toby. He's the guy, the water resources expert that I worked with. And you could see that the erosion was crazy. It was amazing. It was so dangerous, I mean, think about a little kid could have fall in there. When we went there and we were walking the site, he was like, oh my gosh, right? So this rain garden is quite different than what you would do in your yard, because we had a lot of fixing up to do before we even started building the rain garden. So anyway, we had to, do some work there, but you could see the runoff coming from the parking lot. You could see the runoff going into the pond, and it was nothing. It was hard soil. It was unproductive land for sure. It was a mess. Okay. So then this was before, also from a different view. So you could see how the parking lot is in disrepair. It still is. They fixed it up a little bit, but it really needs a whole renovation. And this is also another part of the parking lot. This is where we had to put phase 2, which we didn't realize we had to do, and I'll explain that in a minute. So that is phase 2, and now we're on phase 3 this coming April. So here's our parking lot, just a little bit of it, but you can see how oil, right? Car oil is there, and I guarantee you any parking lot you look at, you're going to see car oil. And of course, when it rains, that will be washed right into the Winters Pond. And you can see how the cigarette butts get caught right in the grooves. That's the runoff. You could follow the path right there. You now know how water's running off because it's breaking up the macadam, right? So it really causes problems, right? It breaks up cement and macadam, and now you have to pay to get it fixed, right? So, again, the triple bottom line there. So anyway, so these pollutants would all be going into Winters Ponds, except now they go into the rain garden. So we worked with the DPW. They were great. Maui DPW was amazing. They helped us amazing. If I had to hire, right, a construction company or whatever to have these big machines, right? At this site, there was all this concrete under the ground, because I think years ago there used to be a building there. Do you know? I didn't know about the building, but there's a huge foundation under there, so I think there was a building, some kind of building there. So, obviously, we had to get that out of there. So we got that out of there, and then we started, obviously building. So here's one of the pits in the very beginning. The soil, what you have to do is you have to test your soil for infiltration. So in Maui, we have clay. It's very hard and not really so great. So we had to amend it with sand and compost and topsoil, so that's a pretty simple thing to do. Depending on site specific, right? Everything's site specific here. So anyway, started making pits, and you could see here's one pit, here's another pit. So, and then we have pipes. So once one overflows, it goes into the other. So it's all connected. All the pits are pretty much connected there. I'm lucky enough to have students, okay, and World Sustainability class. We go out and do community service during class time. And they also have to do 10 hours of community service on their own for their final grade. So, it gets me some workers, and they're happy to do it. They had a ball. So just some community volunteers from Ramapo College that came out that one day when we were building. We had a lot more. I mean, we have hundreds of volunteers over the whole time. And then, over here on the other side of the pond, there's a gazebo, there's a playground, and then there's a walkway that you can walk over the cute little bridge here and come around here. So we connected our path into the rain garden from the sidewalk here. So people can walk right into the rain garden from there. So that's the beginning of our pathway, our walkway. Glacier Landscaping volunteered their time for us, so they, kind of made the walkway for us. So they just used stone dust and used that machine to tap it down. So that our pathway is made of stone dust. And then MEVO, again, the group I'm involved with, the Maui Environmental Volunteers Organization, they, came out when we had planting to do, and they helped us to plant some of our flowers in the rain garden. So thank goodness for, again, community help, volunteers. And summer 2018, so this is 1 year. So we planted it in September 2017, we built it and planted it. This was last year. So, you could see a lot of things were thriving. Any good perennial garden takes years to establish, which I'm sure most of you know. So it was doing really well last year, and hopefully this year it's even better. So, you know, what a difference from that broken up, disgusting, unproductive land to now a nice garden where people can come and hang out and enjoy themselves and sit by the pond, because it's really a beautiful area. The pond is right there. It's very lovely. So now it's a more usable, productive area. And, you know, some of the flowers that we used, right? So very simple, common flowers, right? You don't have to go crazy looking for special flowers to use. So cardinal flower, right? Easy to find. Goldenrod, black-eyed Susies. Okay, these are pictures actually from the Mawa Rain Garden last summer. So they were doing pretty good. Some grasses, we use common rush. Of course, milkweed, you know, you want milkweed plants, Joe Pye weed. These again are pictures from the Mawa Rain Garden last year. And then, of course, you know, you have to love your friends, the monarchs, right? So these pictures, the first day we started planting, you know, we planted the aster, and that monarch was there in 2 seconds. I don't know how it knew that that flower was there now, but I couldn't believe it. It came to visit the flower. Then it landed on, and I forget the man's name, but the volunteer from Glacier that was helping us build the pathway. It landed on his arm, and it stayed there. So then it flew off his arm, and it landed on my finger, which is right here, and it sat there. Like I had my cell phone like this. I have 1,000 pictures, and you know, it wouldn't leave. It just wouldn't leave. And it's beautiful. I mean, look at that. It's like stained glass. It looks like, right? It's absolutely gorgeous. And then after I finally took it off my finger, after 5-10 minutes, I don't know, I put it on a plant, and I went on the other side, because I'm like, I have to get to work. Well, we have things to. So I went to the other side of the rain garden, and I don't have the picture up here, but then it came back, and it flew on my elbow. So I was like, so I think she was telling us, thank you very much for planting, you know, for having a stopover for us to have a little bite to eat, so we could keep our energy up and keep going. So, you know, that's one of the benefits of a rain garden. You know, bringing biodiversity and wildlife to your area. And of course, you know, they need stopovers, right? They need to you know, get some energy to continue on their journey. These are not pictures from our rain garden, but these are other plants that you can use in your rain garden, okay? So you have southern arrowroot, you have boneset, monkey flower, okay? And there's so many more. You know, I just picked a couple of examples that are pretty easy to find. Sneezeweed, lobelia, blue lobelia, lady fern. So, you know, fern, you have different kind of textures in your rain gardens as well. We do have some trees that we planted a little, you know, it's gonna take time. But we do have some red buds that, I think one that we planted, and so forth. So, you know, there's quite a lot of plants that you can use for your rain garden. And of course, you know, like any garden, you know, if you're gonna plant plants in the middle where most of the water is going to be, right? You're going to pick the best plants that like to be wet more than, and then at the edges where it's going to be more dry most of the time, you choose the right species for the different sections. But other than that, they're all pretty common plants. It's not a problem to find. So here's, you know, Ryan. He actually built the rain garden. So we had Toby that designed it and did all that calculations, and he was there too. But Ryan is a graduate from under Toby at Rutgers, so he's a landscape architect's graduate as well. As is Jordan Glacier, who owned the landscaping company. He also graduated with Ryan under Toby. So, you know, I have all this knowledge. I'm very lucky to have them. So anyway, we were doing a pruning workshop for some of the community people that showed up, just to teach them about pruning and things like that. Because obviously it's a garden. You have a little bit of maintenance, you know, sometimes, right? You want to remulch it, and you want to prune, you know, the plants that need to be pruned. So we were teaching these boys, you know, how to prune. So it's so something like this, if in your town, right? It's a very good educational space, right? You could bring school groups there and community members there and teach them all about this. And that's, you know, our future plan is to have, more education here. It's once it's finished. And then, of course, once we made the site better, the DPW said, oh, I'm going to make the site better too. Sometimes that happens, right? So they did. If you notice in the beginning, the pavement, the parking lot was all broken up. So they did do a little patching, paving. So that was good, I suppose. And then they, made lines in the parking lot finally, right? And arrows. So it really improved the whole area, right? So I was happy about that. What they did do, though, which we didn't realize until we started getting rain, was they did another improvement, which they made another exit, because this parking lot, you had to come in and out the same exit. It was like a circle, but commuters in the morning, right? They're frantic, they're running late, there's not enough parking, so they kind of park anywhere. So sometimes you couldn't really get around, right? So they did a good thing. The DPW did a curb cut, and they made another exit. Amazing. I was so happy until we had some big rains. And then what I was seeing where my wildflower meadow was supposed to go, we now needed another pit, because all this water now coming down from Railroad Avenue, was just, the runoff was crazy. The flow was amazing. And you could see. So the day we were going to build that fifth pit, which was last fall, I forget the exact day, it was the most torrential rains you ever want to see. Which, okay, fine. So, I had, my people there, paying my people that I had to pay, So we were going to do it no matter what. It didn't matter. They don't care. They're water resource people. They're in the rain. And I don't care. It's good to be there so you can see what you need to do. So anyway, so we needed to go back then and do a fifth pit, which we did. And, that is, the beginning of digging the fifth pit that day. And now you see this property here? That's a neighbor's property right next to our rain garden. And that yard gets flooded like crazy, okay? That day, that yard was like a lake until we dug this pit. Instantly, that neighbor's yard emptied out. And he came out and was like, thank you so much. So now we, unintended consequence or unintended benefit, right? That neighbor now, his yard is not a lake anymore, okay? So we didn't know that was gonna happen, but it was amazing to see it right before your eyes. So anyway, we built the pit. This is the pit now. Again, some of my students, we were there during class time and we were planting. So that's the fifth pit now. So that was phase 2. So now it's 5 pits, rain garden. And then that day, because it was raining so much, it was perfect because that is the one of the pits working, okay? All of that water got captured into there and it sat there and it infiltrated into the ground and stayed on site and the water got cleansed and it's now stored in our aquifers. And then, I could just show you really quickly, so if you see here, in the middle of Winter's Pond, we now have an artificial floating island, which is another green infrastructure design. We did this with the Boy Scouts. It's just a demonstration project. But again, you use native plants and you cleanse the water using the root systems and biodiversity. And that's good because it becomes terrestrial habitat and aquatic habitat because the turtles, the snakes, whatever you got in there come up in sun, right? And then it protects, for the fish and all the aquatic life as well. So, but that's just another idea of a green infrastructure solution to water pollution. So this was before and after. So you can see it's quite a big difference before and after. So now it's a usable space, it's beautiful, it's productive, it's much nicer. It makes the whole area much, much nicer. And, gathering place for all. So people do use it. Have you been there to the rain garden? Anyone? You live in Mawa, so have you been? No? Okay. Okay, so, maybe in the spring you can come by and see it. So anyway, people do, we have picnic tables and benches, so they eat lunch there, they hang out there, they talk, whatever, they go to Rita's, they get their ice cream, I find the little sticks on the ground, little plastic spoons, but anyway, and of course our ducks and, we have less geese problems it was a mess there because it was just grass and soil and nothing, not even grass really. And there was a lot of geese problems there, right? Now, because we don't have so much grass there anymore, it's not really a good habitat for them. Then they go on the other side. They're still there, but they're just like over there. But, you know, but the problem I have, and I put up a sign, is please do not feed the waterfowl because it's really not healthy for them. You know, and it lists all the reasons why it's not healthy for them. And, you know, when they do come up, you know, the whole walkway is full of their poop, right? So that's not good if you want to bring your little kids there or you're wheeling your baby carriages. You don't want all that stuff all over. So, you know, I'm trying to educate people about why it's not good to sit there and feed and just dump like 1,000 hamburger rolls in the water or on the land that goes in the water. I mean, it's really bad. So anyway, so we're working on that. But so it's a gathering place for all. And then if you are interested in your home, because that's a pretty big rain garden that you probably are not going to install in your house, but residential rain garden. So approximately, now I got this off of Rutgers' site, $3 to $5. I assume it's probably a little bit more than that, I would say. And the plants are pretty much the biggest expense. So, you know, it depends on what plants you choose and how many you choose. But you want to build a rain garden 10 feet from your house. You don't want it close to your foundation. And you don't want it, you know, too close to your septic tank. So at least 25 feet from a septic tank. And, you know, I have rebates a question mark. Because down south in New Jersey, Rutgers, they work a lot down there, right? By the Delaware River. There's a lot of funding going on down there to protect to do rain gardens, to protect the water, and all of that. But they have a program down there, which I'm going to try to get up here north, where they have funding from the water company down there. Okay, so Mawa has their own water company, so, you know, I don't know how that's going to work. But, you know, maybe write a grant, get some funding to actually give residents a rebate back, an incentive, right? So down south, what they do is they have a workshop. So you have to go to their Rutgers workshop, and, you know, in the towns. You don't have to go to Rutgers, but they'll come to the town, do a workshop. If you attend the workshop, you know, for the whole day, whatever, I don't know how they determine. And then if you finish, you get a rebate to put a rain garden in your yard. Okay, so I think that's a good model, and I think that's a good incentive to get these rain gardens in, because it's a cumulative effect, right? Mawa rain garden, it's a big rain garden. It's, you know, almost 1 million gallons of water we're saving, but it's not enough, right? You know, the more the better. The more water we can save, the better. So that's with the rebate question mark. We'll see if I ever get accomplished. And then the legislation that you were talking about is, the bill is S1073. Governor Murphy just signed it on March 19th, I believe. It's the Clean Stormwater and Flood Reduction Act. So New Jersey is now saying to municipalities, you need to manage your stormwater even more than you do now. There's always a management program, right? But now it's getting serious. Okay, our water, it's becoming a problem. Flooding and water quality is becoming a problem. We have too much of this, hard surfaces, and now you have to do something about it. So what this bill allows municipalities to do, it authorizes them. It's not saying every town's going to do it. You don't have to do it. It just authorizes them to create a stormwater utility. So that means if your town, like, I don't know, Mawa, did you read that Mawa was going to do it, or you just read about it? Right. So I haven't heard anything yet about who's doing it, but we're the 41st state to put this in action. So 40 other states have been doing this for a while. So what that means is, depending on how much impervious surface coverage you have on your property, right, you can now get a bill in the mail for stormwater runoff. They're going to calculate how much, you know, I don't know how they're going to do it. I have no idea. You know, and it really is you know, impervious surface is really just your house, your driveways. But if you have a big pool area, you have a lot of patios, you know, any hard surface, somehow they're going to figure out how much you owe, and then you'll get a bill. Now, so how I'm thinking is that's an incentive to put rain gardens in, because if you can stop the runoff, you're not going to get a bill, right? And then you have a beautiful garden. So, so that's what that's about, and like to be continued about that, with what town's going to do it, if they're going to do it, and what the rate is, and how they're going to figure all that out, I don't know. But that is the new legislation that just got signed. So we'll see about that. And you know, one of the beautiful things about gardens, right, it adds value to your house. right? So again, the triple bottom line, right? Bring biodiversity, stop stormwater, but it looks much nicer. If you see a picture of this house with just grass, it's not as pretty, right? The aesthetic value of gardens and are amazing. So that's residential. And then this is just another graphic again for rain gardens. Now, a lot of people have been doing rain gardens for years and years and years, especially if you live by waterways. So, 12,000 rain gardens, 10,000 here. New York City has a whole stormwater management, green infrastructure project going on, with things. Hoboken has rain gardens. I mean, they're all trying to stop the stormwater. Because one of the problems with stormwater is if you live in a community that has combined sewer overflow. And that means one pipe takes your stormwater out, and it's also your sewer pipe. So back in the day when these pipes were built, the population really wasn't that large, so it was okay, right? And we didn't have as much impervious surface, so there wasn't so much runoff going through these pipes. So now what happens is a big rain event or whatever, these towns that have the one pipe, they just let it go into the rivers because they can't handle, the sewage treatment plant can't handle it all, so they just open it up and let it go. So Hoboken, Jersey City, they're all doing these because they have combined sewer overflow. So depending on your community, it depends. But this is saying a rain garden is a beautiful landscape feature in your yard that captures and filters runoff from your roof, driveway, or other hard surface. And the average home rain garden naturally filters 30,000 gallons of water per year, enough to fill a bathtub 600 times. So maybe you could think that way, right? 30,000 gallons, you might not be able to comprehend that, I don't know, right? So think about your bathtub, fill it up 600 times, and that's how much runoff you can capture, right, from an average rain garden. So, perhaps that's the metric they're going to use to figure out how much, how big your house is and how much, water you're going to collect and how much you'll be charged, right? I don't know. So that's rain gardens. So I say, right, we all need to be the solution to water pollution. We all can, right? Starting in our homes, right? By not having so much stuff going on land to pollute our water, but also, to start capturing that water on many different ways. And your watershed and the future watershed is in your hands. So that is my presentation. Here's my name and my email in case you are interested. I have cards too. You could just take a card if you want. And I also have some handouts if you're interested, just for some information. So feel free to take one. And it's just, simple, simple ideas and just some information to remind you. I did not make that up, right? I got that from somewhere. I picked it up, but I thought it was really cool, and I just copied it, so I can't take credit for creating it, but there you go. Do you want more? Take them, yeah. Okay, so any questions?
Yeah.
Yes?
I live in a part of the state county where it's very difficult to shovel. Okay, rocks.
Well, rocks, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, what advice do people like you have for those of us?
Yeah, so you probably need a little machine. And really all you need, even for this rain garden, we used the DPW with their big machine for that big piece of cement that was there. But technically, the other pits, we only used Jordan's little, tiny little, I forget what it's called, like a little backhoe thing. So a simple a landscaper that has a machine like that could help you out. You could, dig them out, but I know, I live in Mawa, we have the same problem. So I've dug a lot of, even when we're building our farm in Camp Go Reservation, think about 2 acres of grass that is now a farm. And we did it all by hand. So boulders, so I understand that problem. But, I would think that if it's huge boulders, you're gonna have to have someone help you just for that digging part. And then you have to amend your soil, obviously, to make it infiltrate more.
Some of those rocks, though, are shelf rocks. They're just like, part of the landscape.
Well, then that's not the place where you're going to build your rain garden.
But that's where you get a lot of your water runoff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you could see where it runs off, and then maybe, it doesn't have to be right next to it, right there. But if it's running this way, you can put the rain garden anywhere. You don't put a rain garden, if you have like an area where it's a wetlands back there, like some people have their backyard and it's always wet no matter what. That's not where you put a rain, that's not the point of a rain garden. It's not a wetlands to soak it up, right? It's for runoff. So you would not want to put your rain garden like in a wet spot like that, okay?
Yeah, I live in an area that has a high water table, and I was told that you really can't put a water garden.
Yeah, so it's like I said, site specific, right? But maybe, your whole yard is like that, because don't forget, it's backyards, side yards, front yards, it could be anywhere, right? Wherever the runoff.
Through the side of my yard.
Yeah, so maybe you would, so your whole entire yard is wet? Even the front, the whole entire yard?
The other side, but I don't know how you divert all that water to.
Well, that's, you can, right? That's just a little more work, right? So, yeah, it's site specific. So, not every spot is maybe going to be able to have one. But there are other things you could do too, I suppose, with piping and things like that. You can run from your downspout from your house. Where does that go? Is that part of the runoff problem? Because you can just continue, like if that was the problem, you could just continue that pipe and, even dig it under the ground a little bit and then let it run into the rain garden. Yeah, everything's site specific, that's the problem. So if I ever did get this program going, right, you would maybe come to the workshop and bring pictures, because you'd have the Rutgers people, the experts, right? Those are the really experts that can tell you more about what you can do and if you can or can't. But you would come, you'd bring pictures or whatever and show them, and maybe they would, we would figure it all out, right? Because you'd have to find the right spot. Because if you're going to do it, you want to make sure it works, right? You want to make sure it works. So, any other questions?
So I'm kind of come down over drain spout, and water just comes off my driveway and down the back. So I made a little path like with rocks and edges.
Well, that slows it down.
But then it puddles in that one spot. So is that where you would put your dig
Yeah.
down and
Yeah, if it's a place where you could put a garden, not in the middle of your driveway or something.
No, in the back. So that's
Yeah.
So you focus it to
Yeah.
that one area and
Yeah.
then start digging.
Yeah, as long as your septic's not there and it's 10 feet from your house.
I don't know where the septic is.
Well, yeah, you have to find that out.
25 feet. I don't know.
You'd have to figure it.
It's your whole front lawn, and that's where the septic is.
It depends, well,
So
So we're counting
mix that.
when you have, that's a whole nother thing. Like I did a presentation to lake associations, and they're having a lot of problems, right, with algae and balloon, all of that stuff. And that was one of the things that we want to get Rutgers more involved with lakes and septics, and because that's a whole nother way of developing, it's more complicated perhaps than just, my house where I have sewers and I have, I'll have a well and I'll have a septic and, so it depends, again, right? You have to evaluate your property and have, figure it out. We could figure it out. You just have to, but, today's a good day. Well, it kind of doesn't look like it's raining now, but any day when it's raining, well, you obviously know where it's coming from, but, you could go outside in your yard and just see where it's running off and then, try to figure it out.
Does that count leaching field too when you're saying 25 feet? Or
I don't know. It just says I would think so. Yeah, I would think that you should stay away from all of that. I would think. Yeah, right. So again, right? Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much, and keep rain gardens in mind. Maybe even if it doesn't work in your house, maybe it works in your community or at your schools. It's a very good educational project because, think about all the education you could do with this rain garden. Colors, research, how many flowers, math and engineering. It's an engineering program, right? A rain garden, where water flows. There's tons of information that students can learn from a garden, especially a rain garden or any garden, right? Any kind of garden. So thank you for coming. Okay, have a good day. Oh, am I exactly an hour?